On a cold November night in Boise, Idaho, the world felt heavy enough to crush a man. Logan Price sat alone at the far end of a quiet bar, his elbows on the counter, calloused hands wrapped around a glass he wasn't drinking. He wasn't here for escape. He wasn't here to sink. He was simply here because everywhere else hurt too much to occupy. His mind drifted to the image of his little girl, Hazel, asleep at the neighbor's house, clutching her worn stuffed rabbit because bedtime stories didn't come easy ever since her mother walked out 18 months ago. Logan's heart felt like a cracked windshield, still holding, but one wrong move away from shattering. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us humanity still exists, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps more than you know. The bar wasn't loud. Soft jazz buzzed over the speakers, and golden lights reflected in the mirror behind the bottles lined up like soldiers guarding a fortress of regrets. Logan wore an oil-stained work jacket and boots that had seen more overtime shifts than he ever wanted to admit. As a mechanic in a failing shop, life had become a constant war against bills. School shoes for Hazel or rent. Her asthma inhaler refill or groceries. Every day, a choice that carved at a father's pride. Then the door opened, letting in a gust of cold air that sliced through the room. The noise of heels was unexpected in a place like this. They echoed like punctuation, sharp, purposeful. Logan barely noticed until a woman slid onto the stool beside him. She didn't belong in that bar, not with her tailored navy coat, sleek black dress, and hair like polished copper tumbling over her shoulders. Her eyes were exhausted, rimmed slightly red like she'd been holding herself together with invisible thread. She placed her hands on the counter. The bartender moved toward her, but she lifted a finger politely. She didn't want a drink. Her presence tugged at Logan's senses. The bar felt smaller now, like the rest of the world fell away. She turned, just slightly, her gaze landing on him with strange familiarity. Then, with a voice soft enough to barely disturb the air, she whispered, "Stay with me tonight." Not an invitation of romance, not a plea for intimacy, but something deeper, an anchor thrown from one drowning soul to another, a request wrapped in quiet desperation, asking simply, "Please, don't let me be alone." Logan didn't know her, yet her words threaded through him like a lifeline. She introduced herself as Caroline Hayes, CEO of Hayes Innovations, a tech firm he'd seen on billboards around town. She was someone the world would call powerful, untouchable. Yet here she was, trembling slightly, asking a stranger to stay because the weight on her shoulders had finally caught up. Logan didn't promise anything, but he didn't walk away either. Their conversation unfolded in slow, cautious steps. Caroline admitted she had just attended a shareholder meeting where she'd been accused of ruining her late father's empire. She had spent years proving she was capable, yet tonight she felt like she had failed everyone. The loneliness of leadership, of decisions that determined hundreds of livelihoods, had become suffocating. Logan listened, his eyes steady. He didn't interrupt or offer solutions, he just stayed. Sometimes that was enough. In return, he shared pieces of his own story. Not everything. Just enough to show he understood pain that stays. Losing his wife to her own choices was a wound that refused to scar. Raising Hazel alone was both the reason he kept breathing and the hardest thing he had ever done. Caroline didn't pity him, she respected him. She didn't see a tired mechanic in a worn jacket. She saw a man who kept going. Caroline asked about Hazel, and Logan's voice shifted, softening like snow melting off a rooftop. She loved flowers, even though she was allergic to most of them. She loved cartoons, even though their TV barely worked. She loved her dad, even though he worried she deserved more. Caroline smiled at the way he spoke about his daughter, like every word was a prayer. As the snow thickened outside, Caroline and Logan left the bar, not together, but side by side. She didn't want him to take her home, she wanted air. They walked through the quiet streets, boots and heels crunching against icy sidewalks. Caroline admitted she came there because she wanted to feel normal, even just for a moment. Logan said nothing. He just offered his presence. They reached a park bench, dusted with snow like powdered sugar. Caroline sat first, and Logan followed. She took a deep breath, as if finally exhaling months of tension. She looked at Logan and said that sometimes leadership felt like standing on a cliff while everyone behind you waited to see if you'd fall. Logan nodded. He didn't know business, but he knew cliffs. He lived on one. They stayed in that park for nearly an hour, sharing silence, sharing truths. When Caroline shivered, Logan offered his jacket. She hesitated, then accepted it, holding it around herself like a borrowed shield. She told him she didn't regret whispering those words in the bar, not even for a second. Logan answered with a small nod. He was glad he stayed. Caroline pulled out her phone, typing something quickly. She asked Logan if she could help him, help his shop, help Hazel, help him breathe again. Logan shook his head. He didn't want charity. He didn't want to be saved. Caroline understood. Instead, she asked if she could bring her car to his shop for maintenance, maybe recommend it to others. Something honest, something earned. Logan agreed. It was the first time in months he felt hope without feeling ashamed. When they finally stood to leave, Caroline looked at him like someone seeing a map for the first time. She thanked him, genuinely, like he had given her something priceless. Logan simply said, "You're welcome," because he didn't need anything else. They walked toward the road, then parted ways under the streetlight's pale glow. Back home, Logan peeked in on Hazel. She was asleep, her stuffed rabbit under her chin. He brushed hair from her forehead and realized he felt lighter, like the world wasn't pressing quite as hard. Maybe tomorrow would still be difficult, but maybe tomorrow had potential. Caroline didn't disappear. She brought her car the next week. She recommended the shop to colleagues. Slowly, business improved. One customer at a time, one repaired engine at a time. Logan found himself breathing deeper, standing straighter. Hazel got new shoes. The bills stopped threatening to drown them, and every so often Caroline would stop by, not for business but for conversation. Friendship formed like a sunrise, unhurried, gentle, earned. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. It helps our channel continue to tell stories that remind us the world still has good in it. Before the ending, please comment, "I believe in second chances." It helps more than you know. Caroline and Logan never labeled what they were. They didn't rush toward anything. What mattered was this: on a night when both of them were breaking, they chose to stay. Not as a romantic fantasy, not as a grand rescue, but as two people who understood that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is show up. And sometimes, the most powerful whisper isn't a promise of forever. It's simply stay, just long enough to feel like you're not alone.